It is clear.
Right. So, what is that we are going to discuss today, which is the first session of course. This is all about an agenda in reference to the solution architecture is concerned. Because from the architectural point of view in application development, this is always important for us to provide the right solutions for the customer, which is the highest priority, irrespective of the technology, irrespective of the domain we belongs to. But it's not only about understanding about the solution architecture. One must have a clear idea over enterprise architecture also. Of course, to be honest with you, as far as the role of a solution architect itself is concerned, we never get into EA. EA stands for enterprise architecture. I mean to say that we majorly focusing on the technicalities of application and how this can be developed, etc. But whenever we want to switch over our career towards architect roles, because architect roles are completely solution-based roles, and this is not something confined to developing code, right? So doing temp testing, right? So all these are all the things won't be included in it. So it is always advisable to have a complete knowledge over the domain perspective in reference to the business level, reference to the infrastructure level, IT level, data level, all that. So what is that we are going to discuss about in reference to the solution architecture? As far as agenda, of course, this agenda was already shared with you earlier. Again, I'm repeating the same first, then I'll get into the next point. So the first we need to understand the importance of architecture in IT, first of all, because whenever we work on the application development, as usually we know, like we have three different layers. One is presentation layer. Second, we have business and logic layer. And the third was data layer, right? You know that. Now, whatever the layers of application development we do, as long as we don't provide a quality deliverables to the customer as per their requirement, what they were expecting by considering their functional and non-functional requirements. At the same time, it is always important for us to understand the solutions. Yeah. Am I audible now, Aishwarya?
Yes.
Okay. Let me repeat what I have said so far. So whenever we try to understand the importance of architecture, we should understand what kind of solutions are we going to develop for the customers. At the same time, what kind of projects are we going to develop? Okay. This is the reason why understanding over the architecture is essentially important. I'll give you an example. Of course, as you are in the field of application development for more than a decade, right? So more than 10, 12 years. Now, when we are going to provide solutions for the customer requirements, usually the customer requirements in terms of the solutions we see will be of different types. First of all, yeah, you can see here. So when we are going to develop the solutions for the customers, as per their requirements and all, will be categorized into three different parts. One, developing an application from the scratch. Aishwarya, please listen carefully. If you have any questions, you can ask. Okay. First of all, developing an application from the scratch is what the first way means. Let's say there is a client. Assume that we are developing a point of sale system. Let me put you this way so that you will be understood well. Let's say, for example, we are going to develop a point of sale system. So what point of sale system is? Point of sale system is a billing system which will be used in the retail outlets, which will be used for the billing purpose. But when we want to use point of sale system, it must be connecting to inventory management. Am I right? Because you want to access any data from the inventory management, make sure you need to connect with inventory management system so that we can access it. Am I right or not? Right. So
Yes.
assume that a customer is coming up with us and they're expecting us to develop a point of sale system. Let me put you this way, right? So what usually we do, we gather the requirements, depends on the kind of perception, expectations, what they have. Followed by this, whatever the amicable solution to be provided is what we do. This is one level.
Yes.
Second, assume that there is a product. Assume that there is a product. Customer using this product since long, and they want this to customize according to their requirements. Understood? Right?
Yes.
According to the requirements. I'll give you an example. Let's say, for example, we are working on healthcare application. Assume that, right? We are working on the healthcare sector.
Healthcare.
Assume that.
Okay.
Now, whenever we want to develop a healthcare application, earlier, if you see, whatever the, especially in context to the US market, I'm specifying this, okay? Not from the Indian market, especially from the US market, if you see, whatever the reimbursements in reference to the healthcare treatment, everything happens through different healthcare plans.
Insurance policy, yeah.
Medicaid, right? So different healthcare plans will be there.
Mm.
Now, earlier, if you see, as an example, I'm giving this point. Earlier, there was no disease or there is no point called COVID prior to 2020,
Yes.
right?
Mm.
Right. So after 2020, what happened due to this, especially the kind of treatment what we have provided at that point in time, COVID was not in the medical reimbursements. As far as the plan of insurance is concerned, there is nothing of this sort because we never had even, we never think of. But unfortunately, it happened. Across the world, we have suffered for the 2 years. Now, what insurance companies do? Insurance companies wants to customize their products and they want to add some new service lines into the existing business. Am I right or not?
Yes.
Right. So this is for two different reasons. Either this can be due to the government mandates. Assume the government has identified expensiveness in terms of the COVID treatment is very high. So what government can decide? Government can decide by giving some code number for COVID, medical code number, and that can be instructed with insurance companies to insert this into the what we call the
Their database.
Right. This is one way. Second, for example, in organization, let me put you again one more example. Let's say there is a healthcare organization. They have different service lines of the business which they were into for a very long time. Now they want to add new service lines into their business model. So what they want to do, whatever the existing products they were using for a very long time, they want to add some new for services and functionalities to the existing application. Yes, sir. Right?
Yes.
Aishwarya, right? So there are some products which customers are using for a very long time. Due to the business rules changes, at the same time due to the government mandates or for whatsoever reason, customer wants us to customize the existing product. Underline this product, customer is using the product as of now, and customer want us to customize the product according to the present requirements what customer is having. Okay, these sort of projects also we deal in the field of application development. Now, third one is called legacy system to a new application. This is what we call it as migration projects. Aishwarya, right? This is what we call it as migration projects. Migration projects means There is an existing legacy system which we have already earlier. Assume that, for example, let me put it this way. Let's say, for example, there was an existing mainframe application which customers are using for a very long time, especially in the field of healthcare. For example, they were using some mainframe application for a very long time. The kind of architecture which mainframe has, the kind of technology, something like COBOL, right? So all these programming languages will be used to write programming for mainframes and all. They were using for a very long time. But due to the reformations happens in the healthcare sector, they want to migrate from legacy applications to the new applications. Understand? Right?
Yes.
They want to migrate from legacy applications to the new application. For example, claim processing. What is claim processing? Let's say Y is a person who has undergone the treatment at the hospital. So once the treatment is done, what usually healthcare organizations do? Healthcare organizations will prepare all the case report, and this will be sent to the claims. This will be sent to the payer, means insurance companies, so that subsequently they get the reimbursement. Am I right or not?
Yes.
Okay, this is the process. Now assume that for this process they were using a legacy system for a very long time. Okay. Now what they want to do, they want to transform their legacy systems to the new application. This is where generally migration come into picture. Right? Migration projects means what is that we want to do? Migration is
Like,
not only about application, migration of data even.
okay.
Right? Migration of data. See, you want to migrate from old legacy systems to the new application. This is one more kind of projects which normally we deal in the field of IT. Am I right? Right? So
Yes.
there are three ways. One, either you can we develop the application from the scratch. That is one way of doing it. Second, irrespective of technology and the domain. Okay, I am not specifying any technology or domain here. Point number two, assume that there is an existing product which customer wants you to customize something into that. Point number two. Point number three, there is an existing legacy system where customer want to migrate from legacy application to application. Right? Yes, sir.
Yes. I have a question here.
Please go ahead.
Migration of technology means suppose a existing mainframe application we want to upgrade in say microservices or some new technology. This is migration of technology. What does migration of data mean? Like, are we? Yeah.
Yes. Now, for let's say that I'll give you an example again. Let's say, for example, there is an application of mainframes which was already used by the customer, which is called legacy. Okay.
Yes.
Now, in claims, especially in context to the claims of healthcare, if I told you, in the claims application, there is an application for claim processing which is called Facets. Facets, F-A-C-E-T-S, Facets. You might have heard about it. In the field of healthcare, there is a core healthcare administrative application which is called Facets is being used nowadays. Now, when we want to migrate the application, what is that you want to migrate? You are migrating the whole infrastructure from legacy to Facets application. In this process, are you creating data on your own now? No, there is an existing data which was located. It can be in any other format. It can be in XML format. It can be on JSON format, etc. Am I right or not? Right?
Yeah.
Yes or no? Right?
Yes.
Right. So there is an existing data which is already there in the legacy systems. Whenever there is a transformation of migrating from legacy to new application, what you have to do? First of all, you have to plan data migration also. Without the migrating of data, even though you are developing a new application, even though you are using a new application, doesn't have any value for that. Will you agree?
Yes.
Yes or no? Right or not?
Yes. So this data is not the data which is stored in the DB. It is the format of data which we are transferring. Like earlier, it is like Excel. Now we want into some JSON. Like how we are transferring the data.
Might be, right? So it can be of any other formats. Sometimes, one more extension to that. Sometimes, for example, mainframe has a database where there is some n number of data which is located already. Now you want to transform this data using ETL process towards the new application. That also we do. Understood, Aishwarya? Clear or not? Right?
Yes.
So now, why am I saying all this? Because whenever you try to understand the importance of architecture in the field of IT, being when we are transforming ourselves into solution architect level, first of all, you need to understand what kind of solution, means what type of project or a solution are we going to develop. Either we are developing an application from the scratch, then the approach will be different. Point number 2, assume that there is an existing product where you want to make some customizations out of this, the approach will be separate. Point number 3, assume that there was an existing legacy application where we are moving from legacy application to the new application, which is called hum bolte migration projects. Migration projects bolte hum. Data migration projects bolte. So this is where generally the 3 different areas of projects, which being a solution architect or solution expertise people, one should be good with. That's the reason why it is always important for us to understand about importance of architecture in the field of IT. Point number 1. Okay, next. What is that we are going to discuss in coming days? That's what I'm explaining to you, right? The second point is that we need to understand the types of architectures. On a high level note, I'm saying, not in the detailed one. On a high level note, usually architectures will be classified into 2 different parts. One is enterprise architecture. One is enterprise architecture. The second is called solution architecture. Okay, clear?
Yes.
Aishwarya, right?
Yes.
One is enterprise architecture. Second is solution architecture. The best example for enterprise architecture implementation in the field of our IT, what is that we use is called TOGAF. I think you might have heard about this. TOGAF.
Which one?
TOGAF.
No, I have not heard about it.
Okay, TOGAF. Jaxman, you heard of it, right? Jackman already.
Yeah, Jackman, I have heard.
Right, you heard of it, right? So Jackman, TOGAF. TOGAF means application group of framework. The open group application framework is what TOGAF stands for. So whenever we try to understand about the architecture, first of all, we need to understand the architecture from 2 different ways. One is enterprise architecture, second is a solution architecture. There is a line of difference because most of the people, I'm not generalizing this statement for everyone, but most of the people will have a confusion over enterprise to solution. Enterprise architecture means knowing about enterprise of an existing organization. Because when you talk about enterprise architecture is being lined up with 4 different areas. One is business architecture. What are all these? I'll explain in coming days, okay? Slowly. One is business architecture. Second is systems architecture. Third is application architecture. Last one is called data architecture. Understood, Aishwarya? Clear about it?
Yes.
Right. So when we talk about enterprise architecture, or when you want to understand about enterprise architecture for any client or a customer, the very first thing what is that you must be knowing about is business architecture. Okay, business architecture. Of course, business have lot many things. I'll explain one by one in coming days, because as of now I'm explaining in a high level note. So hence I'm not going anything in detail. Understand this point. Right. So this is where generally enterprise architecture, majorly be focusing on the business architecture first. Second, we'll be focusing on the systems architecture. Third, we have to be known with application architecture. We must be good with data architecture. So if you are a solution architect, it is always important for us to focus on the solution point of view. Why? Because this solution is completely lined up on two things. One is about functional requirements, and second is about non-functional requirements. Understood?
Yes.
One is functional requirements, second is non-functional requirement. You know what is meant by functional requirement. Now, what is meant by non-functional then? What does it mean? What non-functional stands for?
Maybe non-functional means how much memory it need, how much instances it will need in the pool, or maybe something like these.
No. Any idea apart?
How much load my system, my application
Right.
can have.
Excellent.
Yeah.
See, non-functional requirements means performance, scalability, load balancing. Understand, right or not?
Yeah.
So non-functional requirements means behavior of a particular functionality. This is where generally we talk about non-functional requirement. Understand? So if we being a solution architect, when we want to perform our career, we need to understand what kind of functional and non-functional requirement the customer is expecting out of it. Because we never get into the detailed part of business architecture. Core solution architect I'm talking about. If we are a core solution architect, we never bother about business architecture in detail. We never bother about systems architecture, applications, or data. We never get into that. But of course, whenever you are entering into the career of solution architecture, of course, it is always important for us to know about EA, enterprise architecture, for sure. That is needed, because unless until if you don't know the existing architectures and all everything, going towards solution architecture would be something difficult to sustain ourselves, technically speaking. So when you talk about solution architecture is majorly lined up with two things. One is about functional area, second is non-functional area. Why functional and non-functional I have taken? Assume that if you have taken the first case, what is the first case I have taken here? For example, if you see the first case, what I said, when we are going to develop the application from the scratch, for example, in the first case, if you want to develop an application from the scratch, what we have to do? First of all, you need to identify what features are required for the customer. At the same time, what functional and non-functional requirements customer is having. Am I right or not?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Now, whereas in the second grounds, assume that this product was already there. Underline this point. This product is already there. Now, you want to make some customizations on this. But make sure these customizations should meet these non-functional requirements. If this is not meeting non-functional requirements, then what will happen? Whatever the changes you have made, if it is not performing well, then the application performance will become 0 sometimes, or sometimes minus even for the organization. So that whatever the performance, business performance of particular activity, what an organization is performing will come down. Am I right? Yes or no?
Yes.
Point number 2. Point number 3. Assume that whenever there is a situation where we are moving from legacy applications to the new application, assume that data migration, OJSA projects we are working on. It's always important for us to understand non-functional requirements. Why? Because infrastructure is the change. Will you agree? Because legacy system has a infrastructure. And whatever the new application we are going to develop, either it can be an on-premise application or it can be an cloud application, whatever it is, whatever the application it can be. So whenever we are working on this application, it is always important for us to know about the non-functionality of the application. Why customer is transforming? One reason could be performance. Performance could be the reason. Let's say, let me put you this way. We used to use QWERTY keypad mobiles for a very long time. Yes, sir. Right? We started using mobiles using QWERTY keypad. Am I right?
Yeah.
Point number 1. Now, are we still using QWERTY keypad mobiles? Major percentage?
No.
Why?
I mean, technology has changed. Now everybody is using touch screen.
Why? For what reason? Because our personal and professional reasons are demanding you to use Android. Am I right?
Yes.
Your personal requirements has changed. At the same time, your professional requirements were changed to an extent possible where your existing infrastructure in terms of I'm talking about mobile, QWERTY keypad mobile is nowhere supportive according to the present needs what being an individual we are having. Am I right or not? So what kind of system or what kind of mobiles are we nowadays we require? This application should, this mobile should have a capacity where the processor as well as the speed of the mobile should be much faster. Why? Because whatever the transactions are we doing now, all even financial transactions or data transactions, everything we are doing using mobile.
Yes.
Yes or no, Aishwarya? Right? So
yes.
Whenever we are working on legacy application, one reason could be, underline this. One reason could be customer is expecting some performance issues. The reason why they are transforming from legacy to new application. So at this level, if you have not identified the non-functional requirements properly, what will happen? Whatever the migration of the project we have done doesn't have any value. Understood? Clear, Aishwarya?
Yes.
So the reason why whenever we try to understand about enterprise architecture and solution architecture, before we are getting into solution architecture, it is always important for us to understand about enterprise level, because enterprise level infrastructure as well as tech application architecture as well as systems architecture will also be a part of enterprise architecture. One must be knowing to us. This is point number 2. Okay, clear to you now? Understood?
Yeah.
Point number 3, knowing about the key terminologies. So nothing to tell more about this because we must be knowing about the jargons and terminologies in the field of EA and SA, right? That is required. Next, you must be knowing about the solution architectural differences from cloud to DevOps environment. Because due to the infrastructural challenges or maybe the cost issues or whatsoever reason, we are moving from on-premise applications to the cloud applications. Yes, sir. Right.
Yes.
Irrespective of the cloud service provider, I'm not getting into the more details. Either it can be, you may be adopting AWS, you may be adopting Azure, or you may be following Google Cloud, whatever the cloud service provider we have. We are moving our applications from on-premise applications to the cloud environment. Why are we moving now? Because cloud environment has an infrastructural challenges will be much lesser. At the same time, operational cost will also be much cheaper. Yes or no? Right? So,
yes.
When we try to understand the solution architecture point of view, it is always not possible or it is always not happens that on-premise applications we develop. Earlier it was. Means if you study the solution architecture, for example, this course 9 years back, right? For example, at least 6 to 7 years back and all, you may not be having a need over cloud environment, all that. You may not be required. But nowadays, what is happening due to the infrastructural challenges, most of the organizations were moving from on-premise to cloud. I'm not generalizing this for every products. Most of the products, I can say, due to their different constraints and all, they were moving from on-premise to cloud. So, being a solution architect, how it is different? Providing solution from the cloud point of view, you must be knowing. Clear to you? Understood?
Yes. Yeah.
Next point. We must be knowing about the difference of DevOps environment, because all in them nowadays, all the application development, especially in the field of development level nowadays, we are moving towards DevOps environment where we are implementing CI/CD process and all using different tools like Jenkins, Kubernetes, Ansible, Nagios, right? So this is one thing. So understanding about DevOps architecture is also one of the key element being a solution architect. You must be, because we never know what kind of opportunity we come across. Because in future, whenever you start working as a solution architect, They may require a person who should have a knowledge over cloud architecture also. Who knows that, right? Because as of now, we don't know, right? In future, it may be required. So not should have
Kubernetes falls under DevOps, right?
Sorry?
Kubernetes falls under DevOps category,
yeah,
right?
Kubernetes.
And what about
Kubernetes
Docker?
part of
Docker
DevOps. Yes.
Docker is also part of DevOps.
Sorry?
Docker.
Docker is a container thing, and this is also part of DevOps only. Docker, Jenkins, Kubernetes, Ansible, Negoes, even GitHub, right? So GitHub, of course, GitHub is a code repository we are using nowadays. GitHub code repositories. All these were part of DevOps environment. Nowadays we are using, because earlier, if you see in application development has become an expensive thing nowadays. Why? Because there is a lot of volatility in terms of the requirement of the customer is happening nowadays. Do you agree on that?
Yeah.
Because earlier there was no volatility in terms of the requirement what customer has given. Point number one. Point number two. Nowadays, whatever the release are we doing, I think you might be seeing it practically nowadays. Whatever the implementation are we doing and whatever the release are we doing and all everything in a shorter format. Yes or no, right? So every 1 month, every 2 months, we are going for a release. Agree? Right? So the environment has changed in such a way where you want to adopt some new practices of DevOps and all everything, like DevOps Jaisa. Practices we have to adopt in such a way so that we can provide as much as possible the quality deliverables to the customer. The reason why understanding DevOps environment is also one of the key and prominent element for any solution architect. Clear, understood, Aishwarya?
Yeah. Yes.
Next point. We must be knowing about, of course, we must be knowing about enterprise and business models. This is one of the key element which you must be good with. Next, governance structure. Now, what is meant by governance structure? What is your observation over this? What is meant by governance? What does it mean? Really?
Something like monitoring, like Kibana or something maybe.
Monitoring to an extent possibilities, right?
Apart logging and monitoring.
Sorry?
I mean, logging and monitoring maybe.
Apart from that, anything? Apart from login and monitoring, if you can go in deep of it. Governance is an administrative process.
Okay.
Governance is an administrative process, because if you want to perform an activity or whenever we are working on the project, there are some policies and procedures and standards which we have to be followed. Agree or not?
Yeah.
Because your customer, whoever is your client has some policies and procedures which you must be adaptable with. Agree? Right?
Yeah.
So there is a governance structure which you have to adopt, because governance structure majorly confined towards standards, rules and regulations, policies and procedures, all that. This is also one of the key element as far as governance structure is concerned. You must be good with. Clear to you?
Yeah.
Next, please log off and log in again. The meeting is about to be end. Please log off and log in again.
Me?
Yeah, please.
Log off and log in again.
Yeah. The meeting is going to be ended soon. Please.
Okay, you mean in Zoom, right?
Yes.
Okay.